My status-chasing best friend kept borrowing my designer pieces while telling everyone that I was a charity case. She was publicly humiliated spectacularly in her final attempt to imitate me. Can you imagine someone using your entire life, your belongings, even your home, to build a fake identity for themselves? For 2 unbelievable years, I watched a girl weave a tangled web of lies, all using my stuff, my car, my family's cabin. It drove me crazy, but I never said a word until that web finally snapped one winter weekend, and everything came crashing down in the most spectacular way imaginable. So, there was this girl, Bella, in my economics class. She came from a pretty average family, but she desperately wanted everyone to think she was rolling in cash. She figured out pretty early on that I actually did have money, but I kept it super low-key. And just like that, I became her perfect target. It started small, you know? "Oh, Amy, can I borrow your designer sunglasses just for today? Mine are getting repaired." The next morning, she'd be wearing them to school. And when people inevitably complimented them, she'd just shrug and say, "Thanks. I let Amy borrow them yesterday, but I really needed them back today." Just like that, they were hers, and I was the one always borrowing from her. This was her pattern with everything. She'd ask to borrow my laptop for one class because hers was updating. Then, in front of the whole class, she'd loudly announce, "Amy's laptop crashed again, so I'm letting her use mine later." She'd literally be typing on my MacBook, telling people I was the one who needed to borrow hers. It was infuriating. The pattern just escalated so fast. Bella would come over to my house to study, but really she was taking photos of herself in my room, then posting them online, implying it was her bedroom. When classmates went to her actual house, she'd say she preferred hosting at her other property, meaning my family's place. She got bolder with bigger items. She asked to borrow my Canada Goose jacket because she was cold, then wore it for a week straight, telling everyone she was letting me wear her old one while she broke in her new jacket. I was literally wearing my own jacket while she told people it was her hand-me-down. The most infuriating part was how she'd flip every single situation. She'd ask me for rides to school in my car, then tell everyone she was carpooling with me to help save the environment and letting me use her parking pass. Other students actually started thinking I was this leech, always borrowing Bella's stuff. She built this entire persona around being generous to her poor friend, Amy. Teachers thought she was so kind for always helping me out. She'd even put on this fake, concerned voice, saying things like, "Oh, Amy's having a tough time financially, but I don't mind sharing what I have." Nobody realized she was describing her own situation while using my actual belongings. This went on for 2 full years. 2 years of her wearing my clothes while telling people she was lending me hers. 2 years of her using my electronics and claiming she was letting me borrow them. 2 years of her taking credit for things I owned, all while making me look like a charity case. I never said anything because, honestly, I didn't care what people thought, and I found it pathetically amusing how desperate she was. How far would she take this? I wondered. But then Bella made a massive mistake. A truly massive one. She started dating this guy, Oliver, who was genuinely rich. And suddenly, she felt this intense pressure to prove she belonged in his world. So what did she do? She invited his entire friend group to what she called her family's ski cabin for winter break. She'd been posting photos from my family's cabin for months, pretending it was hers, so she was confident she could pull this off. She told everyone to meet there directly and gave them our address. What Bella didn't know was that my parents had decided to spend winter break at the cabin for the first time in years. Can you imagine? Oliver and his friends were standing at the door when my mom answered, looking utterly bewildered. They explained they were there for Bella's family ski weekend and showed her the text with our address. My mother, completely confused, called me immediately while these rich kids stood in our doorway with their designer luggage. My stomach dropped as I explained everything to my mom, Bella's whole 2-year con game. My mother, usually so reserved, was absolutely furious that someone had been exploiting our family's generosity and giving out our private address to strangers. But my mom, she handled it perfectly. She invited all of them inside and served them hot chocolate while they waited for Bella to arrive. Bella showed up about an hour later in an Uber, wearing my Burberry scarf that she'd borrowed the week before. She walked in and found Oliver, his friends, my parents, and me, all sitting there in our living room. My mother just looked at her and said so calmly, "Bella, I'm so confused. These lovely people say this is your family cabin, but this is our house. And isn't that Amy's scarf you're wearing?" The room went completely silent. Bella tried to stammer out some explanation, but no words came. Oliver slowly started piecing together every single story Bella had told him. The designer bag she owned that I was always borrowing? Mine. The car she let me use? Mine. The vacation photos from Europe? My family trips. My mother, still perfectly composed, continued, "Should we call your parents to come get you? I have your mother's number from school." Bella went completely, utterly white. She stood frozen in my family's cabin living room, still wearing my Burberry scarf. Oliver stared at her with a dawning horror, and his friends shifted uncomfortably on our leather couches. My mother's question hung heavy in the air. I watched Bella's face cycle through panic, calculation, and a desperate search for an exit that simply wasn't there. Her hands trembled as she touched the scarf around her neck. Her mouth opened twice, but no sound came out. Oliver's friend, Alexandra, leaned forward, her expensive boots making a soft scrape against the hardwood floor. The fire crackled in the stone fireplace, the same fireplace that appeared in dozens of Bella's social media posts with captions about family traditions and cozy winter evenings. My father stood near the kitchen doorway, arms crossed, his face showing that quiet, dangerous anger that meant he was holding back. Bella's eyes darted between all of us, finally landing on me. And I swear, I saw something like betrayal flash across her face, as if I had somehow wronged her by simply existing in my own family's cabin. Oliver spoke first, his voice quiet, controlled, almost chilling. "Bella," he said, "explain why you told me this was your family's cabin, why you gave me this address, why you're wearing what you just claimed yesterday was a scarf you'd owned for years." Each question landed like a precise accusation. Bella's face flushed red, then drained white again. She wrapped her arms around herself, the scarf slipping slightly. Bella tried to laugh it off, a high, almost shrill sound. She said it was all a misunderstanding, that she never actually claimed the cabin was hers, just that she had access to it through her close friendship with my family. She thought it would be fun to surprise everyone by bringing them to this beautiful place. My mother's eyebrows rose, a familiar, lethal expression of polite disbelief. Bella kept talking faster, her words tumbling, trying to construct some version of events that made sense. She even gestured at me, saying we were such close friends that we shared everything, that the boundaries between our belongings were blurry by design. She claimed my family had always told her to make herself at home here, to treat the cabin like her own space. My father made a small, disgusted sound from the doorway. Then Alexandra spoke up, pulling out her phone. She started showing screenshots of Bella's social media posts from the past 6 months, with captions like "my favorite place" and "family traditions," all featuring our cabin's distinctive stone fireplace. She scrolled through post after post, each one clearly implying ownership. The evidence was digital, undeniable. Bella's face drained of all color. I finally broke my silence. My voice stayed steady, almost clinical, as I laid out the entire story for Oliver and his friends. Starting with the sunglasses 2 years ago, walking through every single incident of Bella borrowing my belongings and then claiming I borrowed from her. The laptop, the Canada Goose jacket, the photos in my bedroom, the carpooling lie. Oliver's face shifted from confusion to a sick recognition. Alexandra's eyes widened with each new example. Justin slowly shook his head. Oliver interrupted me then. Bella told me Amy was struggling financially, he said, his voice cracking slightly. That she was helping you out by sharing her things and giving you rides because your family hit hard times. Alexandra and Justin nodded, confirming Bella had told them the exact same story. The whole friend group had bought into this narrative of Bella as the wealthy, compassionate friend helping poor Amy. My father made another sound from the doorway, this one clearly expressing disgust. Bella stood there, taking it all in. My mother's fury finally became visible. She stood up and asked Bella directly, "How dare you exploit my daughter's kindness and give out our private address to strangers?" Her voice never rose above a conversational volume, but the cold anger made Bella step backward towards the door. My mother's words were precise, cutting. She asked if Bella understood the security risk of giving out someone else's private property location. How could Bella justify using our home, our belongings, our family's privacy as props for her social performance? My father moved from the doorway to stand beside my mother, a united front. Bella's back hit the door. She had nowhere left to retreat. My mother continued, the disappointment in her voice somehow worse than anger. "We welcomed you into our home, Bella, multiple times. We treated you with courtesy and hospitality, and this is how you repay that trust." Oliver and his friends sat frozen. Bella's eyes filled with tears. She broke down, truly, genuinely crying. She tried to apologize, saying she never meant for it to go this far, that it started small and she couldn't figure out how to stop the lie from growing. The tears streamed down her face. Her shoulders shook. She said she was just trying to fit in, that she felt so much pressure to prove she belonged in Oliver's world. She admitted she made terrible choices and was so sorry that she never wanted to hurt anyone. Her voice broke, and she covered her face with her hands. The Burberry scarf hung loose around her neck, one end trailing down. She kept apologizing over and over, saying she knew it was wrong, that she'd gotten caught up in the lie and didn't know how to come clean without losing everything. I watched her cry, and I felt nothing. Nothing except a strange emptiness where I expected satisfaction to be. Part of me had imagined this moment for 2 years, but now that it was happening, I just felt tired and slightly sad. My mother's expression softened slightly, but she didn't move to comfort Bella. Oliver stared at his hands. Then he looked up. "Bella," he said, his voice flat and final, "I need you to leave immediately." He said one of his friends would drive her back to campus, but he was staying. He needed time to process how completely she had lied to him about every aspect of her life. His words were quiet but absolute. No room for negotiation. Bella looked at him with desperate hope, starting to say something about how they could talk through this, how she could explain everything properly. Oliver held up his hand. "I can't even look at you right now," he said. "Every conversation we've ever had is now suspect in my mind. I need space and time to figure out what was real and what was performance." Alexandra and Justin exchanged glances. The relationship was over. My mother moved to open the door behind Bella. It was a gesture both courteous and unmistakably final. Justin volunteered to drive Bella back, clearly wanting to escape the awful tension. Bella grabbed her bag with shaking hands and turned toward the exit. As she rushed out the door, the Burberry scarf slipped off her shoulders onto my mother's antique rug, left behind like evidence of everything that had just collapsed. We heard car doors slam, an engine start, then the sound of tires on the gravel driveway fading into the distance. The cabin fell silent except for the crackling fire. Oliver sat motionless on the couch, staring at nothing. My father closed the door quietly and picked up the scarf from the floor, holding it for a moment before handing it to my mother. She folded it carefully and set it on the entry table. The whole confrontation had lasted maybe 20 minutes, but it felt like hours. My mother moved to the kitchen and returned with the hot chocolate pot, refilling Oliver's mug, then Alexandra's. She suggested they stay for the weekend since they'd driven all this way. Her voice had returned to its normal, gracious tone. The fury from earlier was completely smoothed away. Oliver looked surprised by the offer and glanced at me before responding. He thanked my mother, saying he appreciated the kindness but didn't want to impose. My mother waved away his concern. "It's no imposition at all," she said. "We feel terrible you've been deceived and dragged into such an uncomfortable situation." Alexandra accepted immediately. Oliver hesitated another moment, then agreed. I was grateful for my mother's social grace in that moment, how she could compartmentalize her anger and still extend genuine hospitality. Oliver set his mug down and looked directly at my father. He apologized for the intrusion and thanked them both for exposing what was happening before he got more seriously involved with Bella. His voice was steady, but his hands shook slightly. He admitted he'd been considering introducing Bella to his family over spring break. His parents were already asking questions about his new relationship. The thought of what could have happened made him go quiet for a moment. He said his family had dealt with people trying to use them for money before. My mother reached over and squeezed his shoulder. "You couldn't have known," she said. "Bella was very calculated." My father nodded. "The important thing is the truth came out before any real damage was done." Later that evening, my father came through the door. My mother had called him at work after the confrontation. He dropped his bags, his jaw tight. He wanted to know if we should pursue legal action or report Bella to the university for fraud. He said giving out our address and impersonating ownership of our property could have serious consequences. His anger was less controlled than my mother's, more raw and protective. I told him I didn't want to escalate it into a legal situation. The social consequences would be harsh enough once word spread. The exposure itself was punishment. My mother agreed, but insisted we needed to set clear boundaries. Bella was never to contact our family again. She'd also informed the university's housing office. My father finally nodded, saying he'd respect our decision, but Bella better stay far away from all of us going forward. When I returned to campus on Monday, the changes were immediate. People looked at me differently in the hallways, not with fake sympathy, but with curiosity and something like respect. Portia, a classmate, stopped me before economics class. She apologized for treating me like a charity case. Alexandra had explained what really happened. Portia looked red-faced, embarrassed. I told her it was okay. Bella had been very convincing, and I'd never corrected anyone. My economics professor caught me after class. Her face looked pained. She'd praised Bella in front of the whole class for being so generous to me. She felt terrible for contributing to a false narrative. I told her she had no way of knowing. She nodded, still guilty. I noticed Bella's empty seat for the next few classes. By Thursday, she hadn't shown up all week. On Friday, the RA told me Bella had requested an emergency room transfer to a different building. She'd moved out over the weekend. The speed of her retreat surprised me, though it made sense. Every hallway, every classroom held witnesses to her lies. She'd chosen to run. Michaela found me in the campus coffee shop a few days later. She slid into the chair and immediately launched into an apology. She'd been spreading stories about my money troubles, talking about how Bella was such a good friend. Her voice got quieter as she admitted she'd felt superior being friends with someone wealthy enough to support a struggling classmate. She'd enjoyed feeling charitable by association. I just stirred sugar into my coffee. I understood Bella had manipulated everyone's good intentions. The staring started that same week and got worse. Students I barely recognized would lock eyes with me in the library, their expressions shifting from surprise to curiosity to embarrassment. They were clearly reassessing everything they thought they knew about the quiet girl who wore plain jeans. Someone had apparently shared photos from my social media showing my family's actual house and the European vacations Bella had claimed as her own. The tension felt invasive. At least when people thought I was poor, they mostly ignored me. Now I felt examined, discussed. I started eating lunch in my car just to avoid the cafeteria scrutiny. My phone buzzed. A text from Oliver. Can we meet for coffee? I need to understand how you let Bella's deception continue for 2 full years without correcting anyone. His message wasn't angry, just genuinely confused. I stared at it for several minutes. I owed him an honest explanation. We met at the coffee shop. Oliver looked tired. I tried to explain that my pride made me feel above caring what people thought. That I found Bella's desperate social climbing more pathetic than threatening. I told him it sounded arrogant, but I genuinely didn't care if classmates believed I was poor, because their opinions felt meaningless to me. Oliver listened without interrupting. When I finished, he was quiet for a long moment. Then he suggested my detachment might have enabled Bella's escalation. Your refusal to correct the narrative gave Bella permission to keep building bigger lies because she faced no consequences. The observation hit harder than I expected. I hadn't fully considered my own role. Oliver showed me screenshots of texts from Bella. She'd been messaging him constantly, sending long paragraphs about her insecurity and family pressure to appear successful. Some messages revealed genuine psychological struggles about never feeling good enough. He scrolled through dozens, each more desperate than the last. He felt sympathy for her pain, but couldn't separate that compassion from anger about her deliberate choice to lie to him for 3 months. Some people face insecurity, he said, without systematically deceiving everyone around them. I asked Oliver what he planned to do about Bella's constant messages. He said he was blocking her number that evening. He couldn't trust anything she said anymore. Every story about her life was potentially borrowed from mine or fabricated. He admitted he felt guilty about cutting her off when she was clearly struggling, but he needed to protect himself from further manipulation. He couldn't be her therapist or savior. I understood completely. Some situations require clean breaks, even when they feel harsh. My mother called that Friday. She mentioned Bella's mother had contacted her, asking for compassion and understanding for her daughter, claiming she was having a breakdown. My mother's voice was firm. She declined, saying our family needed distance. She felt bad for Bella's mother, but couldn't offer absolution when Bella had exploited our generosity and given strangers our private address. I felt relieved. The campus counselor sent an email offering support services. I deleted it initially, but over the next few days, the unwanted attention continued, and my feelings got more complicated. I'd get angry at Bella, then immediately feel guilty for being angry at someone who was clearly mentally unwell. By Thursday, I'd reopened the email and booked an appointment. The counselor, a woman in her 40s with kind eyes, listened as I explained Bella's 2 years of lies, the cabin incident, how everyone now treated me differently. Then I admitted the part that confused me most. I felt guilty, even though I was the one who got used. The counselor leaned forward. What do you feel guilty about specifically? I struggled for words, mumbling about how broken Bella looked when my mother exposed her. The counselor nodded slowly. Recognizing the human cost of exposure doesn't make you responsible for Bella's choices, she said, but it does show you have empathy. Then she asked why I never corrected anyone during those 2 years. I tried to explain that it felt silly to defend my financial status, that I didn't want to brag about having money. The words came out wrong, defensive. She waited, then gently pointed out that my pride in staying quiet actually helped Bella's scheme work. Your silence didn't just affect you, she said. It affected everyone who got fooled. I sat there, feeling like I'd been punched. She was right. I'd been so focused on being above it all that I never considered the damage to other people. 3 weeks later, I was in the library when I saw Bella 2 rows over. She looked terrible. Dark shadows under her eyes, hair pulled back messily. She was wearing sweatpants. Our eyes met for half a second before she quickly looked away and started walking toward the exit. Something made me follow her. I caught up near the stairs. Bella. She stopped, and when she finally looked at me, her expression was pure fear. I asked if we could talk. We found an empty study room. As soon as the door closed, Bella started apologizing in a rush of words. It sounded practiced, but the desperation behind it felt real. Her hand shook. I let her finish. Why did you do it? I asked. Why did you spend 2 years making me look like a charity case? Bella took a shaky breath. She explained about her parents, the constant pressure to network with wealthy students, to make connections. Her dad kept telling her success was about who you know. She said it started with just making her background sound better. Then she realized how easily people believed her stories about helping me, and it spiraled. I told Bella that knowing her motivation didn't excuse 2 years of lying about me. She nodded. She mentioned she'd started seeing a therapist twice a week, trying to understand why she felt so desperate to pretend. The therapist was helping her see her self-worth got tied up in what others thought about her status. I could see she was genuinely trying. She looked at me red-eyed. Is there any way you could tell people I'm not a completely terrible person? She said the situation was more complicated than just wanting to hurt me, that she got trapped in lies she didn't know how to escape. I thought about it. Honestly, I told her I couldn't help fix her reputation. I was still dealing with my own complicated feelings, my role in letting it continue. I needed to process my own stuff first. She nodded. That's fair, she said. Then she picked up her backpack and left. After she walked out, I felt completely drained. The counselor's words kept playing in my head. My detachment, my pride, how they let the situation grow. By staying quiet, acting like I was above caring, I'd actually caused real damage. People believed lies about me because I never bothered to correct them. The recognition hit me hard. I wasn't just a victim. My choices enabled what happened, even if I didn't mean for them to. My phone buzzed with a text from Oliver. He heard I talked to Bella. I appreciated him checking, but I realized I needed to handle this on my own. I texted back I was fine and would talk to him later. Then I turned off my phone, sorting through everything. The next weekend, my parents drove up to campus. Over dinner at an expensive Italian restaurant, I told them about the staring, the apologies, my conversation with Bella. My mother listened, then said something surprising. She suggested that hiding my background so completely might have actually helped create the situation. When you leave an information gap, she said, other people will fill it with whatever story makes sense to them. Bella just filled that gap with lies. I pushed back. Hiding my background wasn't the problem. My father held up his hand. Both things can be true, he said. You have every right to keep your private life private. But your extreme secrecy about everything created a vacuum where someone like Bella could plant false stories. When you refuse to share anything real about yourself, people fill in the blanks. I admitted they might have a point, but I still felt angry that the responsibility was somehow landing on me. My mother squeezed my hand. Moving forward, she said, you need to find a balance between privacy and being authentic about who you are. Then, during dessert, my mother dropped a bomb. Alexandra's mother had specifically mentioned being grateful everything was revealed before Oliver proposed to Bella. I nearly choked on my tiramisu. Proposed? My mother explained Oliver had apparently been looking at engagement rings, talking to his parents about Bella being the one. Alexandra's mother was horrified. The information sat heavy in my stomach. Oliver wasn't just some casual boyfriend. She'd convinced him she was marriage material. He'd been planning a future with someone who didn't actually exist. Back in my dorm, I stared at the ceiling. My determination to stay low profile about money wasn't just about privacy. It was a form of looking down on other people. I judged students who drove nice cars as showing off. I felt secretly superior because I had the restraint to hide my wealth. That pride had blinded me to the real damage my silence was causing. Teachers thought I was struggling. Students who actually came from difficult financial situations might have felt uncomfortable around me. Bella filled the information gap I created. But I'm the one who created that gap in the first place, by acting like my background was some shameful secret. The next week in economics class, a new student approached my desk. She asked if I could recommend study resources. The interaction was so simple, so normal, I almost didn't know how to respond after weeks of loaded conversations. I gave her some tips, and she thanked me. It felt refreshing, clean. Maybe eventually people would stop seeing me through the lens of the Bella situation and just see me as a regular student. After class, Portia caught up with me. "Amy, do you want to join a study group I'm putting together?" I almost said no out of habit, but something made me agree. The evening turned out surprisingly pleasant. Nobody made awkward references. One student made a joke about the professor's handwriting, and everyone laughed. It was the first time in weeks I felt like just another person in a group, instead of the girl at the center of some drama. Michaela walked back to the dorms with me. She mentioned Bella had withdrawn from school for the semester to focus on mental health treatment. Her roommate told people Bella's parents pulled her out and enrolled her in an intensive therapy program. Michaela said student opinions were split. Some thought Bella got off easy, others felt sorry for her. I admitted I felt guilty about Bella withdrawing, even though logically I knew I didn't cause her breakdown. Michaela stopped walking. "Feeling guilty is normal," she said. "It shows you're a decent person. But having sympathy for someone who hurt you doesn't mean you're responsible for the consequences they face from their own actions." Her straightforward perspective cut through all my complicated feelings. Bella made choices every day for 2 years to keep lying, and eventually those choices caught up with her. The next afternoon, Oliver stopped by my dorm to return a book. We ended up sitting on my floor, talking for almost 2 hours about trust and lies. He said he was taking a break from dating, needing to work on his judgment about people. He realized he was attracted to the narrative Bella constructed, rather than seeing who she actually was. He was learning to look for authenticity, paying attention to consistency between what people say and what they do. I nodded. My own realizations mirrored his. I'd been so detached I'd missed the harm being done. I shared that counseling was helping me recognize how my pride and emotional distance were ways of protecting myself from vulnerability. Oliver said he could relate. His family's wealth made him develop similar strategies. We talked about the unexpected downsides of financial privilege, how it can make you either overly suspicious or completely blind to manipulation. He said one positive thing that came from the whole mess was realizing he wanted friendships based on actual connection. I agreed. Maybe getting forced out of my detached observer role wasn't entirely bad. Spring semester wound down. I made a conscious decision to participate more in discussions. Several professors commented, saying they were glad to see me contributing. One even asked if I'd be interested in being a teaching assistant next semester. I said yes without overthinking it, recognizing it as a chance to step into a more visible role without apologizing for it. Alexandra texted, asking if I wanted to come to a sorority event. My stomach tightened. Everyone there would have heard about Bella, but I realized hiding would just confirm I was ashamed. I texted back yes. The night of the event, most people just smiled normally. Several girls struck up regular conversations. A junior named Rachel approached me quietly. She apologized for assuming things about my situation. Her apology was brief, sincere. 2 other girls offered similar quick apologies. By the time I left, I felt lighter. Most people were willing to move past it. At the sorority event, I talked to a sophomore who mentioned almost falling into a similar pattern with a manipulative friend. She described how this girl would borrow her textbooks, then tell their study group she was lending them out. She'd confronted her friend early. Insecurity makes people do wild things to feel like they belong, the sophomore said. Her perspective helped me see the situation as less personal, more about universal struggles with authenticity and social pressure. We exchanged numbers. The campus newspaper ran a feature about authenticity and social media deception. It didn't name Bella, but everyone knew what inspired it. I'd agreed to be quoted anonymously. Seeing my words in print talking about how hiding who you are creates space for others to fill in false narratives felt validating. The article sparked campus conversations about authenticity versus privacy. My parents called. They decided to be more open about our Family Foundation scholarship program at my university. My mother explained they'd always kept their philanthropy quiet, but hiding it prevented students from knowing about resources. The Bella situation made her realize excessive privacy can be its own form of selfishness. My father added they'd work with financial aid to better publicize the scholarship. Listening to them, I saw the parallel to my own excessive secrecy. My mother said being genuine doesn't mean broadcasting every detail, but it does mean being honest when it matters and not creating information vacuums. I told them I was proud of their decision. 2 weeks later, I volunteered for the scholarship selection committee. The first student I met was working overnight shifts, choosing between textbooks or groceries. Another described being homeless. Listening to their authentic stories about real financial hardship gave me perspective. These were people with legitimate struggles who would never dream of pretending to own things that weren't theirs. My anger at Bella resurfaced, but in a different way. Less about personal betrayal, more about the insult to people with genuine need. Oliver and I grabbed lunch. He was still trying to understand what attracted him to Bella, her apparent confidence. Her stories of overcoming challenges had seemed impressive. Now he realized he was attracted to the narrative she'd constructed, not who she actually was. He was learning to look for authenticity. I shared that I'd been thinking about balancing privacy with honesty. Oliver suggested the goal should be being genuine about who you are without using your background as either a shield or a weapon. That meant being honest when it mattered, but not leading with your financial status. His framing helped me see authenticity wasn't about disclosure levels, but about intention and honesty. 3 months after the cabin incident, I saw Bella on campus. She was walking with the campus counselor. She looked healthier. Her hair was neat, her clothes fit. Something about her posture seemed less desperate. Our eyes met for a second. She gave a small, tentative nod. I returned it. We kept walking in opposite directions. The brief exchange felt significant, a mutual acknowledgement that we'd both moved forward, separately, without needing some dramatic conversation about forgiveness or closure. That evening, I texted Oliver about seeing Bella. He responded quickly. Sometimes the best resolution is simply moving forward separately. Not every conflict needs a dramatic final confrontation or reconciliation to be truly over. Real closure comes from internal processing and growth. His perspective gave me permission to let the situation rest. The week after, my economics professor stopped me. She was impressed with my improved class participation. The department was looking for TAs. Would I be interested? I said yes without overthinking it. Walking out of her office, I felt a quiet sense of accomplishment that had nothing to do with money or status. Alexandra texted, "Hiking that weekend?" I said yes. We spent Saturday morning climbing through woods, talking about everything. At the top of the trail, she said she was really glad we'd become actual friends instead of just being connected through the whole Bella situation. Our friendship felt easy, normal. On the drive back, she asked if I wanted to join her family at their lake house over summer break. I accepted without hesitation. The invitation felt genuine. Spring semester wound down. Portia organized a small dinner party for our study group. She texted, asking if I could bring dessert and help set up. I showed up early with a store-bought pie. We talked about summer plans, our worst professors. Nobody treated me differently. The whole evening felt like evidence that I'd successfully integrated into a social circle as my actual self. When I left that night, I felt settled in a way I hadn't experienced before. Like I'd finally figured out how to exist in the world without either extreme of total detachment or constant performance. The next morning, packing my dorm room, I thought about how the entire Bella situation had forced me to examine my own relationship with wealth and pride and authenticity in ways I'd been avoiding for years. I'd spent so long being detached, telling myself I didn't care what people thought, while actually using that detachment as armor. The whole mess had been uncomfortable, sometimes painful, but it taught me that being genuine, even when it's complicated, matters more than staying safely removed from everything. I taped up the last box and looked around my empty room, feeling ready for whatever came next, because I finally understood that authenticity wasn't about how much you shared or hid, but about being honest in your interactions and not using your background as either a weapon or a shield. What about you? Have you ever had to find that delicate balance between privacy and being authentically yourself? Or dealt with someone who used your life to build their own lies? Let me know in the comments below. I really want to hear your stories.